Behind me, everyone, is the Jack Wolfskin Gossamer 2-person tent. I've been testing this out for a long time, and it is time to give you all my agenda-free review. This is a very interesting tent. It has some pros, it has some cons, but in the end, I can easily recommend it. In fact, this is likely the most waterproof tent I have ever tested. It is incredibly waterproof. But again, there are some cons. We'll talk about those in this review. So everyone, let's get to it. Let's begin. Before going over any information concerning this tent, please know that there is a preview. There's also a before you buy, which is like the setup process video. So if you have any questions that aren't answered in this episode, because I'm not going to go over every single detail since I've already done so. But if you have any questions, go back to those videos. With this review, there are 4 parts. There's the preview, the before you buy, the test night episode, which deals with waterproofing, rain testing, and so on, and this is the review. First off, let's talk about price. I paid $90 on Amazon for this tent. Since that point in time, it has sold out. The retail price of this tent is $180, and this tent can also be purchased at the USA Jack Wolfskin website. At the time of filming, I believe it's sold out, and that's because, well, first off, it's a popular tent, and also COVID limitations. Because of the virus, there's limitations on just about everything, including tents. The weight of this tent comes in around 5 pounds. It is a 2-person tent. It features one front door that can be opened up on each side, making it roughly like 2 doors in a way, but it's one side opens and the other side opens, or you can open the entire thing. The dimensions of the tent when it's set up, it is 87 inches long, which is over 7 foot. It has a peak height of 38 inches, but the tent does taper, so keep that in mind. At the widest point, this tent is 49 inches wide. Again, it does taper at the very top and at the end. Getting inside of this tent here, you can see just how big of a tent this is. You can see the large opening here. This is a true 2-person tent, in my opinion. You can imagine my sleeping pad here, the other one. There's plenty of space. Now, with 2 people, it will be a little bit tight, especially if people are trying to change clothes or something like that. But for 1 person, I mean, there's a lot of space here. You could scoot up to the highest point here, change clothes. There's plenty of space here for 1 person, their gear, maybe even 2 people in their gear, depending on how tall and how big everybody is. You can have gear up here, gear at the bottom, and you also have the vestibule space. On the inside here, you do have a hang line so you could dry clothes and whatnot. You can hang a lantern, and on each side, you have 2 mesh pockets. All of the seams are taped. Talking about the body for a second, let's go ahead and pull back the fly so you all can see it. With the fly pulled back, there's 2 things that you notice. First off, there's a ton of mesh with this tent. I mean, check that out. The front, middle, and when you go to the back, it does limit that a little bit. It's more of the bathtub floor. Now, speaking of the bathtub floor, you can see that it is rather aggressive with this tent. So you have to keep that in mind. With the fly on, you really need to set this tent up so you have airflow coming through the front door, because that's the greatest access point. With that bathtub floor, you do get quite a bit of protection from splashing and so on. The next thing that you notice is that this tent has 2 poles, and it includes 2 guide lines, one for the front and also one for the back. Additional information that you should know, this tent is available in 2 colors. You have this dark green, there's also a brighter lime green color. The pack dimensions are 22.4 inches by 6.6 inches. This is the storage bag here, and I can go ahead and tell you that this is rather small. You can get everything to fit, but it will be a tight fit. Usually once I have everything inside of this, I cannot get the top rolled up. Now, from the factory, they can roll it nice and tight, but in the real world, this is a little bit of a struggle. You can get it to work, but you will have to roll it very tightly, and it will be filled to basically the max. The Gossamer 2-person tent features a tunnel tent design, and when it comes to the materials, you're looking at a 75 denier polyester for the fly, which features a 4,000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating. It does have a PU coating, which is UV resistant. The mosquito mesh is a 40D polyester, and the floor is a 150 denier polyester. That features a 10,000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating. The poles are aluminum, and so are the stakes. Before moving on to my pros and cons and the review for this tent, let's talk about my general experiences with Jack Wolfskin. I am very impressed. This is an awesome tent, especially for the money. Now, let's talk about that for a second. $180 retail. Again, I paid 90 bucks on Amazon for it. $180, in my opinion, that's a great price for this tent. Now, I've spoken to people who live outside of the United States where Jack Wolfskin is a bigger brand, and the one common thing that I hear is that their products are very expensive. So I'm not sure Like for an example, the Gossamer 2, I don't know what it would cost, say like in Europe. For $180 here in the United States, that price makes this a budget tent. If you happen to know the price of this tent outside of the US, make sure to comment down below. That would be interesting to know. What really drew me to this tent is the fact that it shares in the same design as the Snugpak Ionosphere. The Gossamer one-person tent is basically identical to the Snugpak Ionosphere tent. This is the Gossamer 2. This is a larger version of that tent. It's a two-person tent. There's certainly a time and a place for a one-person tent, but having that extra space is very nice. And that's where the Gossamer 2 shines. For bigger individuals, they want a bigger tent. Well, this is the option. This is going to work for just about most people. With that information out of the way, let's move over to the pros. First off, the quality of this tent is very, very good. I have to say that I've been very impressed as a whole with this tent. The seam sealing is excellent. The stitching is excellent. There's no loose threads, there's no issues, nothing like that. So as far as quality goes, absolutely top notch, especially for $180. The materials that have been used with this tent are very good. It is extremely waterproof. I've had this tent outside in the pouring rain for roughly 1 week. 1 week. I set this up. I had plans to stay the night in it. I had a family member pass away. I had to go out of town. It stayed out and it went through just rainstorm after rainstorm after rainstorm. I think in total this tent has seen roughly 5 inches of rain with no leaking. None at all. This is the gold standard when it comes to waterproof tents. As far as airflow goes, it's good. It's not great, it's good. Make sure to set the tent up in the proper orientation so you can maximize airflow, namely from the door. When it's all sealed up, ventilation's still good, but again, it's not great. The positive aspect to this tent is that the fly pulls away from the body. So even if there is condensation buildup, you won't notice it inside of the tent. The setup process is fast and easy, and I do have the before you buy episode, which goes over the setup process if you need to see that information, if you need to see that video, or if you happen to need some help. The green color, which you see here, is the darker version. I love it. It's great. The dry line on the inside is a nice feature. Usually I hang my headlamp or a lantern from that. It offers a ton of space for 1 or 2 people, 1 person, a dog, and so on. The price is very fair in my opinion. And the low profile and the dark colors make this an excellent stealth camping tent. Now folks, let's talk about the cons. Let's go over the negatives for this tent. First off, I have a pretty serious issue when it comes to the doors, and that deals namely with the zippers. The zippers basically come down and then they also come around, so there's 2 zippers that meet. Now, when you're inside of the tent, there's a piece of fabric that covers those zippers, so you can never see if they actually came together or not. You have to just pull on it and hope for the best. You can't see them. Well, more times than not, there has been a gap between those zippers, and bugs and spiders have gotten into this tent. In fact, I would say that as far as creepy crawlies getting inside of a tent goes, this is the worst offender I've ever tested. I've had more bugs get inside of this tent, and I hate spiders, folks. I really do. It's a long story, but I don't like spiders. But yeah, with this tent, more creepy crawlies get inside of it than any other tent I've ever tested. And it's because of the design of the zippers. Can you keep the bugs out of this tent? Yes, you can, but you have to be very diligent with those zippers. You really have to make sure that they're closed on both sides. And it's easier said than done. That's not the only issue that I have with the zippers. With this tent, you have the ability to roll back the doors and to tie it off and basically get it out of the way. So you have this fabric, these loops that hang, and oftentimes the zippers will get caught on those when you go to open these doors and also close them. So it's like you go to open and it gets hung, you have to move the material, and then you can open it. So it's a little bit of a hindrance. Already I've spoken of the materials and just how waterproof this tent is. Now with those materials and that high hydrostatic head rating, there is a cost to it, and that comes in the form of weight. For a 2-person tent, this is heavy. Over 5 pounds, this is a heavy tent. And also, the storage size is rather large, as I mentioned before. The storage bag will be filled 100%, and at over 22 inches long when stored, it does take up a substantial amount of space inside of your backpack. Another con that I have for this tent is that Jack Wolfskin used white mesh. That white mesh has stained a lot. I do have quite a bit of use with this tent, but because of that white mesh, it shows every little bit of dirt, every stain, and the entire thing is just covered in stains. To be frank, the mesh on this tent looks like crap, and that's after 4 or 5 months of use. So it definitely does not look good. To summarize my review of the Jack Wolfskin Gossamer 2-person tent, let's say this. I like this tent a lot, even though it does have some flaws. Do consider those flaws before you purchase this tent, But overall, I think for most people, they will be happy with this shelter. This is a good quality tent at a fair price, at least in the United States anyway. Again, I'm not sure what it costs in Europe and so on, but $180 retail is a very fair price for this tent. As far as waterproofing goes, this is the most impressive tent I've ever tested out. This really is the gold standard, as I said before. It's large, it's somewhat heavy, somewhat bulky. There's design aspects that could be better, namely with the zippers. But all in all, this is a high quality tent that I can easily recommend. And folks, that wraps up my review of the Jack Wolfskin Gossamer 2-person tent. This is an excellent shelter, and I cannot wait to hear your thoughts about it. Make sure to comment down below, share your thoughts about the company as a whole, and also the Gossamer 2-person tent. If you have any questions for me, feel free to email me. I'll help you out if I can. Hit the thumbs up. It does help the channel, and support the channel here on YouTube and Patreon if you want to. Folks, be well, be good, be safe, strength and honor. I'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.